Two sleeps, one night. The medieval secret to better rest. Introduction. Picture this. You're living in medieval Europe, and it's completely normal to wake up in the middle of the night, spend an hour or two awake, then go back to sleep until dawn. This wasn't insomnia or a sleep disorder. This was simply how people slept for thousands of years. Today, we'll explore the fascinating world of medieval sleep patterns and discover why our ancestors divided their nights into two distinct periods of rest. The two-sleep system, a historical reality for much of human history, from ancient civilizations through the Middle Ages and well into the early modern period. People followed what historians now call first sleep and second sleep. This wasn't some obscure practice limited to a few communities. It was the universal rhythm of human rest. Historical evidence for this pattern is overwhelming. Court documents, personal diaries, medical texts, and literature from the period casually reference first sleep and second sleep, as if everyone understood these terms. A 16th-century French physician wrote that the period between these sleeps was ideal for study and reflection. English literature features characters who routinely awoke after first sleep to conduct their business. Even ancient Roman writings suggest this rhythm existed in antiquity. Whether you were a farmer in rural England, a merchant in Florence, or a monk in a monastery, the two-sleep system shaped your night. The first sleep began shortly after sunset, lasting about 3 to 4 hours. Then people would wake naturally, spend 1 to 2 hours awake in the darkness, before settling into their second sleep until dawn. The role of darkness and natural light. To understand why this system developed, we must imagine a world without electric lighting. In medieval villages, true darkness settled once the sun disappeared. Houses might have a small fire or a candle or two, but these lights were expensive to maintain. Most people lived with shadows and silence once night fell. This absence of artificial light profoundly influenced human biology. Without bright illumination to disrupt natural processes, melatonin, the hormone regulating sleep, surged earlier in the evening. People naturally became sleepy shortly after nightfall, especially during winter, when darkness could last 14 hours or more. It made perfect sense to divide this long stretch of darkness into two manageable blocks, rather than attempting one unbroken period of sleep. The seasonal cycle reinforced this pattern. In winter, first sleep might begin well before 9 p.m., while summer brought shorter nights that still maintained the familiar rhythm. What happened during first sleep? The first sleep began as daily activities wound down. The evening meal had been eaten, household chores completed, and doors barred against the cold and darkness. Families might gather briefly by the fire for conversation, prayers, or quiet tasks like mending clothes, but the day's physical labor and early darkness made sleep irresistible. Sleeping arrangements varied by social class. Peasants slept on straw mattresses in wooden frames, often sharing beds with family members for warmth. Nobles enjoyed feather beds, heavier blankets, and sometimes canopies to trap heat. regardless of comfort level. This first rest was considered the deepest and most restorative part of the night. Modern sleep science confirms this intuition. The first sleep corresponded to what we now know as slow-wave sleep, when the body repairs tissues, consolidates memories, and replenishes energy. People didn't wake groggy. When this period ended, they awakened naturally, as if an internal switch had been flipped. The mysterious midnight hour, when first sleep ended, households entered a liminal space, neither fully night nor morning, neither work nor rest. People awoke without urgency, guided by internal clocks, synchronized with natural rhythms. Though darkness remained outside, small lights glowed within. The flicker of candles, the faint orange of rekindled hearths. This wakeful period served multiple purposes. Spiritual activities. Many people prayed during these midnight hours, believing them especially sacred. Religious manuals and sermons encouraged worship during this stillness, suggesting God was more attentive in the deep silence. Monastic life was structured around canonical hours, with prayers often scheduled during the night's middle period. Practical needs. People used this time to add wood to fires, check animals in barns, or tend to children. Mothers especially valued these quiet hours for nursing infants without daytime distractions. Reflection and planning. Without daylight's distractions, thoughts turned inward. People recalled dreams, pondered problems, or made plans for the coming day. The stillness encouraged contemplation impossible during busy daylight hours. Social connection. In households where multiple people shared beds, family members, servants, or guests, this became an opportunity for quiet conversation. Whispered discussions could range from family matters to community gossip, and the midnight pause offered a calmer setting for resolving disputes that had flared during the day. Intimacy. These private hours away from daily work's rush provided couples with opportunities for intimacy and connection. Occupational adaptations. Not everyone used the interval between sleeps for rest or reflection. Certain trades made these hours among their most productive periods. Bakers were perhaps the most famous example. Dough prepared the previous evening needed kneading, shaping, and baking in time for morning markets. This meant lighting fires and heating ovens well before dawn, making midnight the true start of their workday. Millers sometimes worked at night, taking advantage of cool, steady air for grinding grain. During winter's short daylight and damp conditions, night work ensured bread and flour were ready for the following day. Watchmen belonged entirely to the midnight world. In towns and cities, they patrolled streets, guarded gates, and listened for signs of fire, one of the period's most feared dangers. Their quiet rounds were vital, and they were among the few who saw sleeping cities under moonlight. Even in rural areas, midnight wakefulness served practical purposes. Farmers checked livestock, protected against predators, or prepared tools for the next day's work. The second sleep and dawn after an hour or more of quiet wakefulness, people returned to bed for second sleep. This final stretch carried them from night's depth into dawn's first pale light. Unlike the heavy, restorative first sleep, the second was often lighter, drifting between dreams and half-awareness. The timing of second sleep often depended on seasons. In winter, it could last until well after sunrise, giving farmers extra warmth before braving the cold. In summer, it ended earlier as field work began with daylight's first glimmers. This second rest completed a pattern that had endured for centuries. To those who lived it, the two-phase system wasn't a quaint tradition. It was simply how nights worked. The disappearance of segmented sleep, the two-sleep rhythm, began fading in the 18th and 19th centuries, victim of sweeping social and technological changes. The first force of disruption was artificial light, gas street lighting, and later electric bulbs. Cities could remain awake long after sunset, and people no longer felt compelled to follow natural darkness. The Industrial Revolution reinforced this shift. Factory work demanded punctual starts and standardized schedules. The luxury of waking midnight, stretching, and lingering by the hearth was incompatible with 6 AM factory whistles. Urban living contributed further. Crowded housing, thin walls, and increased noise made quiet wakefulness less appealing. By the early 20th century, most of the Western world had forgotten the concept entirely. First sleep and second sleep vanished from common vocabulary, becoming historical curiosities preserved only in old books and scattered memories. Modern implications and conclusion today. Sleep researchers have found that when people are removed from artificial light and allowed to follow natural rhythms, they often revert to two-phase sleep patterns. This suggests segmented sleep may be more aligned with our biology than the modern ideal of straight 8-hour rest. What we sometimes label as insomnia, waking at night, and being unable to immediately fall back asleep, may in some cases be our body's natural inclination resurfacing. The medieval approach to nighttime offers a reminder that our ancestors lived in harmony with natural rhythms we've almost entirely erased. They accepted night as a layered experience, not a block of unconsciousness, finding value in the quiet space between sleeps. In that pause, they prayed, worked, loved, and reflected activities we now squeeze into daylight hours. Perhaps there's wisdom in their patient acceptance of darkness and the gentle rhythms it encouraged. The story of two-phase sleep reminds us that many aspects of modern life we consider natural are actually recent innovations. Our medieval ancestors may have understood something about rest, reflection, and the value of quiet darkness that our brightly lit, constantly connected world has forgotten.